Major Katherine Walsh won her case on a cold Wednesday morning in February, sitting in a courtroom at Naval Station Norfolk, watching the judge clear her name and restore her reputation. She should have felt triumph, relief, vindication. Instead, she felt nothing, because in the 18 months it had taken to clear her name, she'd lost her marriage, her relationship with her daughter, her closest friendships, and any passion she'd once had for the career she'd just saved. She'd won, completely, unambiguously, and it meant nothing. It started 20 months earlier when Katherine was accused of stealing narcotics from the hospital pharmacy at Naval Medical Center San Diego. The accusation came from Commander Nash, the pharmacy director, who'd discovered inventory discrepancies that seemed to trace back to Katherine's access codes. Katherine was stunned. "I didn't take anything. Someone must be using my codes." "Your codes are your responsibility," Nash said. "If someone else used them, you should have reported the compromise immediately." "I didn't know they were compromised." "Then you were negligent in protecting them." The investigation began. Katherine was suspended from patient care, restricted to administrative duties, watched as her colleagues whispered and avoided her. Her husband, David, a civilian contractor who worked on the same base, was supportive at first. "They'll figure out you didn't do this. Just cooperate and it'll be fine." But as weeks turned into months, his patience wore thin. "How long is this going to take? The suspicion is affecting my work. People are asking if my wife is a drug thief. I didn't do anything wrong. Then why is this taking so long? If you're innocent, shouldn't that be obvious?" Katherine didn't have a good answer. The Navy's investigation was thorough and slow. They were reviewing months of pharmacy records, interviewing dozens of staff members, building a timeline of every access code used. Katherine hired a lawyer, an expensive civilian attorney who specialized in military defense. The retainer alone was $25,000. The full case would cost at least $100,000. Money they didn't have. Money that would drain their savings and their daughter's college fund. "Is this really necessary?" David asked. "Can't the Navy provide a defense attorney? Military defense attorneys are overworked and underfunded. If I want the best defense, I need to pay for it." Katherine looked at the contract. "This is our daughter's college money, but if I'm convicted, I lose everything anyway. At least this way we're fighting." David signed the check, but his resentment was obvious. Their daughter, Emily, 17, and applying to colleges, was humiliated. "Everyone at school knows. They're saying my mum is a drug addict, that she was stealing pills to sell them." "None of that is true." "Then why are you suspended? Why are people investigating you? Why is this happening if you didn't do anything wrong?" Katherine wanted to explain that accusations don't require guilt, that investigations take time, that justice is slow. But Emily was 17. She only understood that her mother was accused and that people believed it, and she was ashamed. Katherine's lawyer discovered something important. The pharmacy's access code system had a flaw. Multiple people could use the same code if they knew it, and Katherine's code was one of the default codes assigned to senior staff, meaning it was widely known among nurses who'd worked at the hospital for years. "Anyone who worked here in the last 5 years would know your code," the lawyer explained. "That means dozens of people could have used it." "Can we prove that?" "We can prove the system allowed it. What we need to prove is that someone else actually did it." The lawyer pulled up more records. "The good news is that the theft pattern doesn't match your work schedule. Some of the medications were accessed during shifts when you weren't working, so I couldn't have taken them." "Right, which means either someone else used your code, or the logs are wrong." The lawyer paused. "The bad news is that Nash is claiming you could have accessed the pharmacy remotely, that you have admin privileges that allowed you to log in from anywhere." "I never used remote access. Can you prove that?" Katherine couldn't. The system didn't log failed remote access attempts. It only logged successful ones. And if she'd never tried to access remotely, there was no record of that. Her lawyer filed a motion to dismiss. Based on the evidence that Katherine couldn't have committed some of the thefts, the Navy rejected it, said the remote access theory was plausible enough to continue investigating. The investigation dragged into month 7, month 8, month 9. Katherine's marriage deteriorated. David was barely speaking to her, sleeping in the guest room, coming home late. "I can't do this anymore," he finally said. "Living under this cloud, watching our savings evaporate on lawyers, dealing with people asking me about my criminal wife. I'm not a criminal. I'm being investigated. It's been 9 months, Kate. 9 months of this hanging over us. 9 months of stress and legal bills and whispers. I can't keep doing this. So what are you saying? I'm saying I need a break. I'm moving into an apartment, temporarily, until this is resolved. You're leaving me. I'm taking space. There's a difference, but there wasn't a difference. David moved out 2 weeks later, took his belongings, left Katherine in their house with the mortgage she could barely afford on her reduced income. Emily chose to go with him. I can't deal with the drama. Mom, everyone at school is talking about you. It's easier if I'm living with Dad. Katherine watched her daughter pack, watched her family dissolve, and the investigation continued. Katherine's lawyer found the break they needed. One of the pharmacy technicians, a civilian named Robert Morrison, had been fired 6 months earlier for unrelated performance issues. During his exit interview, he'd made comments about knowing things that could cause problems for management. Katherine's lawyer tracked Morrison down, interviewed him, found out he'd been stealing narcotics for 2 years using senior staff access codes including Katherine's. Why didn't you come forward earlier? The lawyer asked. Because Nash told me if I kept quiet, he wouldn't press charges. Said if I just left quietly, we'd call it even. Morrison pulled out his phone. But I kept texts, proof of what he said. The texts showed Nash had known about Morrison's thefts, had known Morrison was using Katherine's code, and had made a deal to let Morrison go quietly rather than report the thefts. Then, when the inventory discrepancies became too large to hide, Nash had blamed Katherine. He threw you under the bus to protect himself. The lawyer told Katherine Morrison was stealing. Nash knew and covered it up. When the thefts became obvious, Nash blamed you rather than admitting he'd let a thief go free. So, I'm innocent. Completely. And we can prove it. Katherine should have felt relief. But she just felt tired, because 12 months had passed. 12 months of suspension. 12 months of legal fees. 12 months of watching her life fall apart, and now she'd have to rebuild from rubble. The evidence was presented. Morrison's confession, the texts showing Nash's cover-up, the proof that Katherine couldn't have committed some of the thefts, because she wasn't working those shifts. Nash was called to testify, denied he'd known about Morrison's thefts, claimed the texts were taken out of context, said he'd genuinely believed Katherine was the thief. The judge wasn't convinced. Commander Nash, you had evidence that Mr. Morrison was using unauthorized access codes. You chose not to report it. Then, when inventory problems emerged, you blamed Major Walsh, despite having no direct evidence linking her to the thefts. This appears to be a case of covering your own negligence by scapegoating a subordinate. Nash's face went red, but he had no good response. The judge ruled, Major Katherine Walsh is cleared of all charges. The evidence demonstrates she did not commit the thefts she was accused of. Furthermore, the evidence suggests Commander Nash acted improperly in both failing to report known thefts and in falsely accusing Major Walsh. Major Walsh's suspension is lifted immediately. Her record will be cleared. She will receive back pay for the period of suspension. Katherine stood as they read the verdict, vindicated, completely. Her lawyer congratulated her. Colleagues who'd stood by her expressed relief. The base commander issued a formal apology. Katherine went home to her empty house and felt nothing. David filed for divorce 3 weeks after Katherine was cleared. I'm glad you were vindicated, but too much has changed. I can't go back to how things were. We can rebuild. The nightmare is over. For you, maybe. For me, it's just a different nightmare. 18 months of stress, 18 months of financial pressure, 18 months of being married to someone under criminal investigation. David wouldn't meet her eyes. I'm sorry, Kate, but I'm done. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Katherine got the house, but also the mortgage. David got to move on with his life. Emily stayed with her father, visited Katherine occasionally, but their relationship was strained. I know you didn't do it, Mom, but you were still gone for all those months fighting the case. You missed my senior year, my graduation, my college applications. Dad was there for all of it. You weren't. I was fighting for my career, for our future. You were fighting for your reputation. And you won, but you lost us in the process. Katherine tried to repair their relationship, but Emily was heading to college, starting her own life, and the distance between them felt permanent. Katherine's friendships had evaporated. The colleagues who'd supported her did so carefully, professional support, not personal. They'd stepped back during the investigation to protect their own careers. Now that she was cleared, they were politely distant, and her career, the thing she'd sacrificed everything to save, felt hollow. She'd been vindicated, cleared, restored to full duty. But she didn't care anymore. The passion was gone. The purpose was gone. She'd spent 18 months fighting to keep her career. And in winning that fight, she'd destroyed everything that made the career worthwhile. Katherine returned to full duty at Naval Medical Center San Diego. Same hospital, same patients, same responsibilities she'd had before the accusation. Everything was the same, except Katherine wasn't. She went through the motions, showed up for shifts, provided competent care, completed documentation, did everything required of a senior Navy nurse. But the fire was gone. The sense of purpose that had driven her for 22 years had been extinguished somewhere, between the false accusation and the empty victory. Her commanding officer noticed, "Major Walsh, I want to check in with you. You've been back 6 months. How are you adjusting?" "Fine, sir. No issues. Your work is adequate. But it's not the standard you set before the investigation. You were a leader. You mentored junior nurses. You implemented safety protocols. Now you just show up." Katherine didn't know what to say. "I'm doing my job. You're meeting minimum standards." That's not the Major Walsh I knew before this happened. Maybe that Major Walsh doesn't exist anymore. Her CO studied her. "The Navy owes you an apology. You were wrongly accused. Your name was cleared. But I understand that clearing your name doesn't undo what you lost fighting the accusation. It doesn't. Have you considered counseling? The Navy provides counseling. Won't bring back my family. Won't restore the relationships that fell apart. Won't give me back the 18 months I spent fighting instead of living." Katherine met his eyes. "Sir, I appreciate the concern, but I'm functional. I'm providing adequate care. That's all I have left to give." Herco didn't push, but his concern was noted in her evaluation. Major Walsh's performance is satisfactory, but lacks the engagement and leadership she demonstrated prior to her false accusation. Recommend monitoring for signs of burnout. Katherine read the evaluation and felt nothing. Burnout implied there had been fire to burn out. She just felt empty. Emily came home for Thanksgiving break during her freshman year at UC San Diego. She stayed with David, but agreed to have dinner with Katherine. They sat in Katherine's dining room, the house that felt too big for one person eating. A meal Katherine had spent hours preparing. "How's school?" Katherine asked. "Good, busy. I like my roommate. Classes are harder than high school, but manageable." "Are you still thinking about pre-med?" "Yeah, I'm taking biology and chemistry. It's interesting." Emily pushed food around her plate. "Dad says you're not doing well, that you're just going through the motions at work." "I'm doing fine. He says you seem depressed, that you won your case but lost everything else." Katherine set down her fork. "Your father has opinions about things that are no longer his business." "Mom, I know you were vindicated. I know you didn't steal those drugs. I know you were fighting for your career." Emily's voice was quiet. "But you were also missing. For 18 months, you were so focused on the case that you weren't really there for me or Dad. And now you have your career back, but you don't have us. I didn't choose to be falsely accused. I didn't choose to spend 18 months fighting to clear my name. But you chose how to fight. You chose the expensive lawyer that drained our savings. You chose to put everything into winning the case." Emily met her eyes. "And you won. But was it worth it?" Katherine wanted to say yes. Wanted to say her career, her reputation, her integrity, all of it was worth fighting for. But looking at her daughter across the table, seeing the distance that had grown between them, Katherine wasn't sure anymore. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought winning would fix everything. I thought once I was vindicated, life would go back to normal. But there's no normal to go back to. The life I had before the accusation is gone, and the life I have now feels like I'm just existing." "Then why did you fight so hard?" "Because I didn't know what else to do. Someone accused me of something I didn't do. The system was investigating me. If I didn't fight, I'd lose everything by default. So I fought." Katherine paused. "I didn't realize that fighting meant I'd lose everything anyway, just differently." Emily was quiet. Then she said, "I wish you'd fought less for your career and more for us. I was fighting for all of us. If I'd been convicted, I'd have lost my pension, my benefits, everything. How would that have helped you or Dad? But you weren't going to be convicted." Morrison confessed. Nash was covering up. The evidence would have come out eventually. Emily's voice was sad. "Maybe if he'd spent less on lawyers and more time being present, Dad wouldn't have left. Maybe I wouldn't feel like I lost my mom even though you were cleared." Katherine had no answer to that, because Emily was probably right. Katherine received an offer from a civilian hospital in Oregon, director of nursing position, significant pay increase, fresh start far from San Diego, and all the memories. She should have been excited. It was a promotion, recognition of her skills, despite the false accusation, a chance to rebuild professionally, but she couldn't summon enthusiasm. She called her lawyer, the one who'd successfully defended her. "I need advice on a career decision." "What's the question?" "I've been offered a director position in Oregon, good pay, good opportunity, but I'm not sure I want it." "Why not?" "Because I don't know if I want to be a nurse anymore. I spent 18 months fighting to keep my career, and now that I have it back, I don't want it." Her lawyer was quiet. "Katherine, may I be honest with you? Please. You paid me a lot of money to defend you, to clear your name, to restore your career, and I did that. You won completely." The lawyer paused. "But winning a legal case doesn't fix psychological damage. You were traumatized by the accusation, the investigation, the loss of your family. Having your name cleared doesn't undo that trauma. So what do I do?" "You get therapy. Real therapy, not the Navy's employee assistance program. You process what happened to you. You grieve what you lost. And then you decide what you actually want, not what you think you should want because you fought for it." Katherine made an appointment with a civilian therapist, started working through 18 months of stress, loss, and emotional devastation she'd pushed aside while fighting her case. "You experienced prolonged trauma," the therapist explained. "False accusation, public suspicion, loss of your marriage and relationship with your daughter, financial pressure, legal stress, all while maintaining your innocence and fighting for vindication. But I won. You won the legal case, but you lost almost everything else. And now you're experiencing what's called hollow victory syndrome, when winning doesn't feel like winning because the cost was too high. How do I fix it?" "You can't fix it. You can only process it, grieve it, and decide how to move forward." The therapist leaned forward. "Katherine, you fought for 18 months to save your career. Now you need to decide if that career is still what you actually want. Not what you fought for, not what you sacrificed for, but what you genuinely want now, given everything that's happened." Katherine thought about that for weeks. She'd been a Navy nurse for 22 years, had defined herself by that career, had sacrificed her marriage, her daughter, her savings to protect it, and she realized she didn't want it anymore. Katherine submitted her retirement paperwork. 22 years of service, she'd be eligible for pension, could walk away from the Navy and never look back. Her commanding officer tried to change her mind. "Major Walsh, you were wronged by this organization, but you were also vindicated, cleared completely. You have years of productive service left. Don't let one bad experience end your career." "It's not one bad experience ending my career. It's me choosing to end my career because I don't want it anymore." Katherine met his eyes. "I fought for 18 months to keep this, spent $100,000, destroyed my marriage, lost my daughter, and I won. But the thing I won doesn't mean anything to me now. That might be temporary, post-traumatic stress. Give it time. It's been 2 years. I've been in therapy. I've processed what happened, and I've realized that I don't want to be a nurse anymore. Not because of what happened, but because fighting to keep it showed me I was holding on to something that no longer served me." "What will you do?" "I don't know yet, but it won't be nursing, and it won't be in the Navy." Katherine retired with full honors, 22 years of service recognized, a plaque thanking her for her dedication. She stood at the ceremony and felt nothing. Katherine moved to Montana, bought a small house outside Missoula, took a job doing medical equipment sales using her knowledge without the emotional weight of patient care. She rebuilt slowly, made new friends who knew nothing about false accusations or legal battles, found hobbies, went to therapy regularly, learned to live with what she'd lost. Emily visited occasionally. Their relationship was better, but would never be what it had been. Too much distance, too many missed moments that couldn't be recovered. "Do you regret fighting the case?" Emily asked during one visit. Katherine thought carefully. "I regret that fighting was necessary. I regret what it cost. But if I hadn't fought, I'd have been convicted of something I didn't do. I'd have lost everything and been labeled a criminal." She paused. "So no, I don't regret fighting. I just wish winning had felt more like winning and less like losing everything that mattered. Was it worth it? I don't know. I saved my reputation, cleared my name, proved my innocence. But I lost my marriage, damaged my relationship with you, and killed my passion for nursing." Katherine looked at her daughter. "I won completely, and it hollowed me out. So was it worth it? I genuinely don't know. Emily nodded slowly. I'm sorry it happened to you. Me too. They sat in silence, a mother and daughter separated by circumstances neither had chosen, connected by bonds that had been damaged but not destroyed. It wasn't the life Katherine had planned, wasn't the outcome she'd envisioned when she started fighting the accusations 3 years ago, but it was real and honest, and slowly, painfully, she was learning to accept it. Katherine volunteered at a legal aid clinic, helping people navigate false accusations and wrongful terminations. She understood the cost of fighting, the hollowness of winning. She met people who'd been falsely accused. Some were still fighting, some had won, some had lost. She told them all the same thing. Winning might not feel like you think it will. You might clear your name and still lose everything that mattered. That's not a reason not to fight. Innocence deserves vindication, but prepare yourself for the possibility that vindication won't heal the wounds created by the fight. So what do we do? They asked. Fight if you need to fight. Win if you can win. But understand that winning the case doesn't mean winning back your life. Those are separate battles. And sometimes the second battle is harder than the first. Katherine lived with her hollow victory, with her vindication that had cost her everything, with the knowledge that she'd been right, been proven innocent, been restored and still lost what mattered most. She'd won her case, and it had meant nothing. That was the truth she carried, the reality of hollow victory. Sometimes winning isn't enough. Sometimes you sacrifice everything to save something, and when you've saved it, you realize you don't want it anymore. Katherine Walsh was vindicated, completely, unambiguously, and she would spend the rest of her life learning to live with what that vindication had cost.